Hey everybody, today we have a A761H, which is out of a 2013 GS350 Lexus. So anytime a Toyota has an H at the end of the designation, whether it's 340H, 761H, 440, 441H in Land Cruisers, that means it has an integral transfer case. This transfer case is built into the transmission. It's got its own little pan, its own valve body, and it's all one unit. All right, in this video, we're pretty much just focusing on the transfer case components because I know there's probably not anything else out there on the internet. These are pretty rare and not many people are seeing them. There's another video we have on the 761. If you look, I'll link it in the description. But this is mostly going to be to show you how to do the transfer case section. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is take off this 30 millimeter nut on your output flange going to your front drive shaft. All right, and this is got a little slot where this nut gets staked in. Next, and it's a little odd, the first time I saw one, this looks like it's a fill plug, which doesn't really make sense because this transmission is a single fill. So it's one 17 millimeter bolt, but it's one of the ones that holds this thing together. And we can kind of do this in layers. As you see, it's got its own little pan. And there's a little valve body under there that controls your transfer case. So now this got this tough Toyota pink silicone on it. So you usually gotta do some fussing with it. Some tough stuff. What we used to use? Yama Bond? What was the gray stuff?
Honda Bond.
Honda Bond. So we have a little tiny valve body under here. And the reason I'm doing this part first is because we have to disconnect this connector. Okay? And now there's a 10 millimeter up here. And this whole thing is kind of going to pull through once we get the valve body off. So the valve body is just 1, 2, 3, 4 little bolts. Kind of cute. It's like 2 valves and a duty cycle solenoid. You see this thing's pretty nasty. This is pretty metallized fluid here. And then we can see in here our transfer case components. So let's take the rest of this apart. So for stuff like this, I like this little extension. It's 1/2 inch drive to 1/4 inch and a 14 millimeter. And we got a couple layers. So we're going to do this one at a time. Okay, this is our first set of bolts. This has a bracket if you want. You can mark where that goes. So this is the little tail housing portion. And as I said, let's take this through here. And this whole thing is going to come through. All right, this Toyota silicone's some pretty tough stuff, so I'm going to have to give it some massaging with this dead blow mallet. Oh, too bad. Okay, we have a ring gear in here. Got a bearing. That's component number one. Next we have a planetary gear. It has a bearing on top, bearing on the inside. Goes like said. Next we have a little clutch drum. And these clutches are what put you in four-wheel drive. They look to be in pretty nice shape. Now on these older H versions, we had an H version of the A340. So the A340H was a 4-speed auto with an integral transfer case. There's the A761H, which is a 6-speed with an integral transfer case. There's the Land Cruiser, what is that, a 440, A440H. So there's several Toyota transmissions that have an internal transfer case, and they're kind of a pain. It makes them a little bit difficult to work on. So we have this ring tower back here, and on some of these other versions that I discussed, that was kind of the problem. Like the clutch drum would wipe out these sealing rings. And I believe the symptom used to be no movement whatsoever. Okay, so this is just a little oil delivery system. Beyond that, we have a couple seals. And I strongly recommend that you don't lose these because they're probably difficult to get. And they don't really go bad. I mean, they're just little pieces of rubber that get mushed in there. A lot of stuff has these little tabs, and their purpose is for disassembly. Got a little flap here. It's going to allow oil to go in and out. And underneath here, we have a couple bearings, and we have a chain. The chain looks to be pretty decent shape. We have another one of these oil delivery sleeves. And then we're going to have a couple more bolts that we're going to need to take out to get the rest of this apart. And these things kind of, not too bad. Something to take note of, this chain looks like it has kind of a different link that goes to this side. So we'll try and reposition it that way. All right, so we have 2 sprockets. And this is a pretty heavy duty chain. Require a transfer case. They're usually not that heavy duty. So now what we have left is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, looks like 6 more bolts. And that should be it. Also, if you look in here, there's like a little pressure tap. So I wonder if that's an assembly line thing where they kind of could hook up to it and check pressure while they're running it on a test machine or whatever they do. So that is more or less your transfer case for an A761. Now I'm going to show you how this all goes back together. Okay, so first we're going to put some grease in here, and that's going to hold this little seal in there because we're going to have to defy gravity a little bit. Now we'll put some silicone sealant. All right, there's 6 bolts and they're of 2 different lengths, 3 different lengths. Longest one is here, second longest one is there, and the remaining 4 are the same. So we'll call this, I don't know, layer 1. There's no published torque spec, but I'm going to go by the size of the bolt, and we're going to go 40 foot-pounds on all of these. Next is another one of these seals. All right, I showed you before this chain is identifiable by this missing piece, and also there's a colored link here, okay, and that has to face up when you put this together. So there's 2 sides to it. Obviously one of them is threaded for your output yoke, and that's going to face down. And you just want to kind of tap them down evenly. All right, and when you're done, this should all move pretty freely. And again, you want to be looking at that link. All right, so next we're going to need a little more silicone. And probably an important point, you need some here too. And again, a little lube to help this go over these bearings a little more easily. Our next layer. And we're going to have to tap that down with a mallet. All right, there's a couple different length bolts. One here that's different. One at the end that's different. We have this 17 with a washer here, and the rest of these are the same. So we're going to 40 foot-pounds. And this bolt's a little bit bigger, so we're going to go to 50. Again, they don't really publish torque specs, so got to kind of estimate. 2 more rubber seals. Next is this little ring tower, and you can see 2 of the bolt holes are close together, and that's kind of your 6 o'clock. And we're going to go 20 foot-pounds on these. Okay, your drum and clutches. Stack these up. I showed you the clutches before. Line the teeth up. I'm going to get this planetary to spline down into the teeth. When you hear that sound, it's down all the way. Okay, so that's your planetary and clutch drum. Bearing on top. And our ring gear slash output shaft. You guessed it, more silicone. All right, these bolts are a little cleaner, and that's because they're internal bolts, and they go in here. All right, so there's a couple short bolts here. Then the rest of them are longer because they go all the way through. And again, we're going to do the 40 foot-pounds here. So before we finish up, we're going to look into this tiny little valve body. Those all look to be the same length. Then we have two coming from the other side. One of them's got a little bracket to hold the solenoid in. And I'm going to try and pick it up from the plate in case there's check balls or anything. So we have a screen there. Okay, no check balls. So we're just going to do a quick cleanup on this. As with any valve body, kind of make sure it's flat. I mean, I don't foresee there being any issues with this. The transmission didn't have any kind of all-wheel drive complaints or malfunctions. And this looks like a pretty typical Toyota duty cycle solenoid. And it looks like we have a couple valves in here. So we're going to see if these are free. I'm going to take them out and clean them in a minute, but can you see in here, if I'm pushing down on this retainer, that valve is moving. And that looks to be some kind of regulator valve. And this one is like a regulator valve, and it looks like it's got some type of plunger. So let's see what that all looks like. One valve here, that's the retainer, an end plug, a valve, and a sleeve, and a spring. So that's what's in this bore. We'd reinstall it like so. It's a little heavier. Retainer, the end plug, a valve, and a spring. Not much of a valve body, but this is what we got. I'm just going to check the resistance on this solenoid, which people overrate the value of this test, but it's going to tell you if it's open or shorted. So I have 5.7 ohms, which is kind of typical of a duty cycle solenoid. The other check we can do is there's a valve in here, so we could see if this valve is free and moving, which it is. I sanded this off camera. If you guys take a look, you see that? You have all high spots around the bolt holes, which is typical. So it's pretty important to stone stuff because it does make a difference. So we got a spring and a valve. And obviously this is nice and free. An end plug. And your retainer. That's valve number one. The second one has this sleeve, and as we can see, it's got a window and all these passages that have to face up. So there's probably going to be a couple things that have to happen at once to put this back in. Got our valve and spring. And again, this is pretty free, but this whole thing shifted on us. So we're going to line that window back up, and we're going to have to get this plug to kind of line up here so we can put the retainer in. But the sleeve is going to want to move on us, so not too bad. Okay, so that's that. So we could turn this over because there's no check balls or retainers that are going to fall out. So we could turn this over and put it on here. And this bracket has to kind of engage in these slots. Finish torquing these once we put the bolts in from the other side. And as you can see, this one and this one are smaller bolt holes. So those are going to go in first because that's going to serve to align all this stuff. So there's no published torque spec, but just based on experience and the size of these bolts, we're going to call it 55 inch-pounds. And I express all measurements in freedom units on this channel, but I'm also going to put up the Canadian equivalents on the screen. So that's it. That's your valve body. So I'm just going to air check the clutch pack real quick. It has a little bit of leakage, but that's typical of this kind of Teflon ring, but you can tell is when you pull it out and all that air is backed up. That's a good air check. So next we have to put this connector in first. Kind of fish it through. So now I'm going to use these studs to guide this valve body in. And connect that as we go. So same deal, no published spec, so we're going to go 80 inch-pounds. Same deal, we're going to use the studs. And lastly, the bolt to the case connector. This hub we're going to put on. So a little bit of grease. I like to use some Loctite on the nut. And it's a 30 millimeter. Did that lefty so you guys could see. And there's a little place right here that we're going to stake this nut into so it can't come loose. All right, something to be aware of on Toyotas. A lot of the late model ones have this stuff, which is a, and some of them it's like a transmission warmer, and it's got lines that go out to a cooler in the front of your vehicle. This doesn't have any of that. This is little tuna can is your whole standalone cooler. So if you want more, which I can't blame you, and you want some real cooling on this, these fittings are available, and they're nice enough to thread these holes, you know, so you could put this stuff on. So just for the purpose of demonstration, obviously there's going to be 2 of these, and now you could have the option of running braided steel lines or whatever you want and putting an actual oil to air cooler on the front of the vehicle. So this is the part number for you guys if you want to buy these. It's a 90407-14034.